I just want to take a few minutes while we have all of you here to talk about a couple of new policy briefs that CED has just published. They're hot off the press. One of the challenges, major challenges that Tom identified both in his comments today and in his book that faces urban districts is the challenge of leading and managing people, and this whole, which has come to be called the sort of human capital challenge, and really can be viewed, as his comments have indicated, across a spectrum of activities that start with training and run through recruitment, selection of teachers, placing teachers, induction and mentoring, performance management and evaluation, professional development, and the strategic use of compensation. In 2009, CED wrote a report that Mike referred to called Teacher Compensation and Teacher Quality, where we recognized that entire spectrum of human capital issues and decided that for this particular project, we were going to focus on the compensation element of the continuum. We argued in that report that the traditional way of paying teachers, which basically reflected only how many years of service they had and the formal academic degrees and credentials that they had accumulated, was increasingly problematic. There's no recognition of performance in that system. There's no recognition of labor market realities, so that you have the persistent shortages of certain kinds of teachers in certain fields because supply and demand are out of whack, and you can't adjust to those when you have only one schedule for paying teachers. In the traditional system, there are no incentives for teachers to pursue instructionally effective professional development, because in most cases they got paid for whatever additional degrees or credentials they accumulated, whether or not it affected what they were doing in the classroom or not. In fact, a lot of teachers got sort of degrees that would qualify them to be administrators, but that wasn't doing anything to help their ongoing instructional practices. And as Tom actually mentioned toward the end of his remarks, there are no promotional pathways for teachers. The way to have your career evolve was to leave the classroom. So in our report, we talked about a lot of those issues, and you have to read the report because I don't have time to go into all of them. But one of the things that we did was highlight the new compensation system. At that time, it was fairly new, that had been put in place in Denver, because Denver was one of the few districts that, instead of just supplementing the traditional pay scale with various add-ons that address some of these problems in an ad hoc basis, Denver had actually replaced the single salary schedule with an entirely new approach to teacher compensation. And so we gave some attention to that in our 2009 report, so that people could see there was actually a way of doing it. It could be done. This wasn't just a theoretical idea. But we also emphasized that districts needed to design their own approaches based on their local circumstances and needs, that we were suggesting that they learn from Denver but not copy Denver. So one of our new policy briefs is entitled More Districts Adopt Innovative Teacher Pay Plans. And this is just an extension on the theme of giving some newer examples of what districts around the country, ways they are finding to alter the traditional teacher pay schemes. We looked in particular at Baltimore, Hillsborough County, which is Tampa, Florida, and Pittsburgh. These are not the only places that are doing creative things, but they are three examples of large urban districts that are tackling these issues successfully. And we think that they offer some promising in illustrations about how districts can build new systems based on innovations such as new approaches to recognizing teacher achievement. Not just how long they've been there and how many credits they have, but other things that can be recognized as part of a pay plan. Developing career ladders and redefining teacher roles, which again gets at this notion that we have been very uncreative in this country compared to some others about thinking about how to give teachers pathways through a career while not having to leave the classroom. and new approaches to evaluation. Evaluation of teachers is critical to a lot of these issues in the human capital pipeline, not just in terms of how you pay teachers after the fact of their performance, but how do you help them learn to be instructionally more effective. And so in addition, in this policy brief, we highlight a new Gates Foundation initiative called Measuring Effective Teaching, which is a major event to try to identify the elements of effective teaching so that this information can be made available to districts as they think about building new evaluation systems. And this Gates initiative currently involves 3,000 volunteer teachers in 6 school districts and more than a dozen research organizations that are really trying in a very systematic way to see if we can more effectively than we have in the past actually identify what an effective teacher does and how you would recognize it. In our 2009 report, CED also called on our major constituency, business leaders, to become engaged as critical friends in helping school districts adopt new approaches to human capital. And our second policy brief gives an example and details about how the business community in one district went about doing this. The brief describes the long-standing and ongoing collaboration between the Austin, Texas Chamber of Commerce and the Austin Independent School District in developing, implementing, and now expanding a very significant strategic compensation initiative. And the brief provides information about the specific steps that the business community there took in order to work with and support the district's efforts. And so again, we're hoping that this will serve as kind of a proof of, and give examples and perhaps be thought-provoking for business leaders in other districts about how they actually can get involved and work with district officials. So I invite you to read the policy briefs to get a fuller view of these examples. Those of you in the room, I think, have them at your place. And for those of you who are online, you can find them and the original CED report on our website, which is www.ced.org. And now I will turn the microphone back to Mike to lead us in some Q&A.